Hey, everybody, welcome to the Look Ahead Friday with myself, Tony George from DocSports.com, and of course, Mr. Sean Salisbury. Um, Minus a steak and a beer today, I might add. On the
Man alive.
Woodshedding. We thought a
I
woodshed.
actually,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I was going to say, Tony, you deserved that steak. You earned it, obviously. I would have, when the game was going on early and it was that defensive struggle, where they were not shooting. I thought they're going to hang around just enough to stay within a three-pointer. And then they missed about 4 or 5 down the floor. Michigan hit a couple threes. Wagner was getting to Wagner. Wagner was getting to the basket and playing out of his mind, and they could not hit a jump shot. Remember, and we said if all of a sudden Garza comes into this game, and you were on Michigan the whole time, and I said if Garza doesn't score 25 or more, they're going to be out of it. And his shooting he did not play well. They did not play well. Wagner had a really good game. They did everything they needed to. And with that pull away, when you play Michigan like that and miss 3 or 4 trips down the floor, you're about 8 down. And before you know it, they were down double digits. And it was a good call by you. I thought for a while, I said, man, this is going to be one of those games in the 50s. And of course, Garza's going to get hot and keep it close. You hit that one, man. You were 2 for 3 yesterday for me, but you hit all 3 of them, the under, the NBA game. But you got this one. I owe you a steak and whatever drink you want. So there you go.
Yeah, I sent Mr. Salisbury a text about a minute left in that game. Told him how I like my steak cooked. So we were having
how
a little
that
bit.
how that drink gets poured and what you want on that steak, the whole thing. You earned that right last night. Was there ever a point in time going, Tony, when you thought, okay, this low-scoring game, it can't help but keep it close in the first half? Into about 14, 15 minutes, I thought, well, we're going to have a second half ball game here, but Michigan's just too much, too athletic, and Garza can't score 16, 17 points and win a game. When you're playing against the number 3 team in the country. Yeah,
they're in the driver's seat, and they are definitely in the driver's seat with Ohio State going down last night, and Tom Izzo coaching how he coaches, which we're talking about the Michigan-Iowa game, folks, because we're leading into Kansas and Baylor, and many similarities in what's going on in Kansas right now. When you talk about Tom Izzo in the Big Ten and how a good coach can coach his team up from basically bringing them up from the ashes and rising and making some noise to get in the NCAA tournament. And that's exactly what Bill Self has done at Kansas. They're 5-1 their last 6 games. They've done it with defense. Their defense is allowing, and if you take a look at the last 5 game in defenses, the last 5 game stats, Kansas allowing 58 points a game, and that's how they're winning basketball games. They covered a 13-point spread against Kansas State and only scored 59 points. So they're playing defense, shocking, folks. Yeah, and Baylor allowing 67. Now, the one thing that makes you scratch his head, and we are going off KenPom ratings for perceived lines because we're doing these before the lines are out. I'm thinking Baylor is going to come in here anywhere from -8 to -9. You might get a little less than that just based on the fact that Baylor's coming off a 5-point win against Iowa State when they were laying damn near 20. But that was their second game in the month of February because of COVID. So they came out a little rusty. They were down double digits. And one thing, Sean, and I'm sure you can attest to this, being a ex USC football player, NFL player, you know that from time to time, a championship team is not only judged on how they blow people out, but how they come back in games when they're facing adversity and find a way to win a basketball game. And that's exactly what Baylor did in that game, despite Iowa State's record. By the way, Iowa State, while their win-loss record isn't impressive, they do give everybody a ball game. They just can't get over the hump. And
kind of like their football team, right? Their football team's good, and they're in it every week. They grind.
Yeah,
they grind.
Yeah. And 2 good coaches there, by the way. Matt Campbell's a great college football coach, and they just signed him to a 5-year extension. I'm sure everybody in Ames, Iowa was real happy about that because every time a job opened up, Matt Campbell, they just locked him down. And but nonetheless here, Baylor at Fog Allen, last game 77-69 back in, I believe that was, and the total was 146. Now I think the total is going to come around 145-ish here, which might be a little bit high. Offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency in the Big 12, Sean, Baylor's ranked number 1 in both. Kansas number 6 on offense, but number 2 on defense, right behind Baylor. When you're looking at the conference efficiency rankings here, offensively, Baylor's still putting up average in their last 5 games. This is going back into January now because they've only had 2 games. 86 points a game, Kansas 71. So I guess my question to you is the last 2 road games that Baylor played, Sean, when they were clicking, they had double-digit wins at Texas and at Oklahoma State. And anybody who watches Oklahoma State, it's not easy to go into IBA Arena and get a win. It's just not easy. They're very, very tough. They're just a different animal at home. So 2 impressive wins there. 3rd game in March, laying a number in Fog Allen with a surging Kansas team. No real impressive wins. Their last game, they lost to Texas last week, as you know, Sean. I tell you what, I'm curious to know how Baylor responds off a tough game like they had and, kind of getting their sea legs back underneath of them. Is this a tough test in Kansas, or does the cream rise to the top and Baylor, show everybody why they're the number 2 team in the country behind Gonzaga?
I can't wait to see it. The Baylor is the number 2 team in the country, and if Gonzaga and Baylor are both at their best playing, we got one hell of a basketball game. But this is Kansas, not Gonzaga. And go back to your point, Tony, about the measuring of whether you're somebody who's given seedings in the NCAA tournament, whether you're a former player, basketball, football. Yes, I don't judge teams just on the way that they hammer teams. I judge them on how they come back in a game and or battle through times when it's not going good. I'm big on that. I'm big on how'd you play? How could you win when you weren't playing your best? COVID hit them, what it was like 3 weeks worth. I mean, they were struggling through this thing. They're 18-0. I mean, they're undefeated this season. Tony, I don't think anybody other than an Iowa State game where they had to fight back from. I don't think anybody's been within 8 points of them this year. I mean, they at least in a run. They've dominated everybody, and even at times when they haven't been playing their best. But this game's curious for me. If it is coming at like 9 points, it could be 8.5, 9 points. That seems like a lot. If this was being played at Baylor and they had another game under their belt, I'd probably say Baylor because I think they're that good. Because if they both play their best, I actually do think Baylor's 8 to 10 to 12 points better than Kansas this year. But Bill Self's done a hell of a job. He realizes, and that they can Jalen Wilson on offense. This isn't your typical Kansas scoring type of team, right? But they're playing defense, and they're going to have to play defense against Baylor. That being said, Baylor's got one of the best point guards in the country. He's a Cousy finalist, and he is taking care of Jared Butler's played great basketball this year. But to me, with this Baylor game, going to Allen Fieldhouse, it's a brutal place to play normally. You're coming off a rough one where you were extended in the game against Iowa State. Kansas is coming off a game where they had a big lead, and Texas took them to overtime and took care of them. At home, if Baylor had 2 more games under their belt, and knowing what their schedule is the rest of the way, pretty brutal run down the stretch before the tournament, I think Baylor's going to win the game, Tony. And Bill Self will keep him in it. I like Kansas in the game when it comes to, if you've given me 9 points, damn, man, you're laying those points to me. I'm going to take Kansas. But if they both play their best, I'm going to lose this. I would lose this bet. But I think Kansas is going to hang around defensively enough. And they're a little bit more tested over the last month because they've played more games. I'm taking Kansas if you're 9. Now, if that thing creeps down to 7 points, Tony, if it were to come in that low, I'd be thinking. But that extra basket matters to me. I'm taking Kansas at home, Allen Fieldhouse. Baylor wins, but Kansas keeps it closer than the spread.
Yeah, and I would have to lean that way a little bit. It's surprising to me that Bill Self does not have a perimeter game, that he has not recruited players in-house that are a 3-point threat. Kansas, that's like Duke and North Carolina not having shooters. I mean, it's just it's dumbfounding to me. That being said, Bill Self knows the only way he can win this game is to hold them under 80. Hold them under 75. Now, they only had 77 at home against Iowa State, who plays 0 defense. Granted, They're a little rusty, but they're going to have every single shot contended here. And I will guarantee you that Bill Self will slow his offense down to a snail's pace to eat clock. That's why I think if you can get this thing in around 145, 143-ish, the last total was 146. I think you'd probably take a look at the under here. I would be surprised to see Baylor out of the 60s. And I don't know where Kansas is going to land because Baylor does play good defense. They're going to contend every shot that Kansas had, which is going to hold Kansas down. Could Baylor woodshed them by 20? Yeah, they could. You know, no doubt about it. If Kansas doesn't play defense, they will woodshed them. You know, much like Tony, Michigan did. Yeah.
Yep. If they get the over, and I'll tell you what, if Kansas goes and misses 4, 5, 6, and they're empty down the floor, and Baylor's playing Baylor basketball, then they'll get out in front and run them, and that can very easily happen with this Baylor team because they are obviously. I mean, they're nobody going to be shocked when you're the number 2 team in the country if that. Not only are they sitting in the Final Four, but have a chance to play for the national championship. They're that good, but. You know, rust comes in. It's hard to sustain your best basketball every game. It really is. These are kids, and they're coming off and getting their energy back. And I'm sure they understand what they're going into in Kansas. I'm telling you, if the game hits the over, Baylor is not losing. That would mean that Kansas, while they may have scored more, it means that Baylor's running it up there in the mid-80s, Tony, and that will not be good. On the other side, though, if this game, and you said keep it 80 in the 75, if it's in the lower 70s, hell, Kansas may have a chance to hang around and be even closer than we think. If it's in the 60s, Bill Self may be able to pull this off. It's hard to go undefeated. You and I both know that. And with Kansas, the most wins in the Big 12 now, I like Kansas if the spread comes in. But if you and I like the under as well, and maybe that's because I'm leaning towards Kansas. It hits the over, all bets are off for me. I'd go Baylor, but I'm taking Kansas. And I think you're right leaning towards that under because the way that the defense has been playing, and it's going to have to play that way at home in Fog Allen, or Kansas is going to go home with a monster loss.
Yeah, and, you know, you saw on Thursday night how hard it is to remain unbeaten and how hard it is to remain at a level of excellence that meets the headlines, and that was the Gonzaga game against Santa Clara. They really struggled last night to put them away. Matter of fact, they were 17.5 point. I looked at the halftime line and that it was 17.5, and I took Santa Clara. It's that time of year, folks, and that's why we give you the free $60 in the link in the description below. Be sure and get over to Doc Sports and take advantage of that this weekend. I've hit 66% of my last 63 college basketball games documented, which is unbelievable in this climate. So get over there and get yourself some winners, not only from me, from 12 other handicappers, and a ton of free information. But that being said, it is late February and early March, and nothing comes easy for anybody this time of year. If you doubt me, you can ask Gonzaga from last night. You can ask Ohio State from last night. You know, it's that
Iowa.
It's that
Iowa.
Iowa.
Last night. That's exactly right.
Right. So tiptoe through the tulip slightly. Get over to Docs. Check out the other videos that Scott and I are going to give you on the look aheads here on Friday. Thanks for tuning in.